Hey everybody, and welcome back to Project 224, where we are committed to applying the true knowledge and wisdom found only in Christ to the everyday world around us. Hey, we're back.
We are back. What's up, man?
Not much. Hey, I was listening to that beginning and I couldn't remember where it ended, so I was like, I don't want to cut myself off. You know?
By the way, you know what I haven't seen in our email? The Better Than Butter challenge.
I was thinking about that yesterday. No one has stepped up to the challenge.
That's terrible.
You know what we should have? Okay, so we're gonna have a guest in a couple minutes, and we should have her try it and see what happens.
Way to pull one out. Just so you know, this is what you get to do. You get to do the Better Than Butter challenge.
Okay, so can I say something really quick before we jump in? All right, so I watched a baseball game recently.
What?
I know, right? So
we had an interest in one, right?
Right, yeah. Because of our friend Connor.
Yeah.
He actually pitched for the Giants, and so I actually have my first baseball hat.
Oh. Was it a Giants hat?
It's a Giants hat.
Good.
Yeah. That his mom brought back from Giants Stadium.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So all that to say, Connor, if you ever listen to these, hope you do well, man.
Yeah.
Praying for you. And I think he just pitched a couple nights ago again.
Yeah, and he's coming up in a couple nights. He's pitching.
That's all we're going to talk about in baseball.
Yeah,
because that's all I know.
It turns into a disaster.
Right.
Let's just be honest about that. Yeah.
How are things with you? You went on a cruise recently?
I did.
Yeah.
I went on a cruise and it was fantastic.
That's awesome.
We did nothing.
Which
is exactly what you do on a cruise.
That's even better. Yeah,
absolutely. we didn't even get off the boat in Nassau. We went to the Bahamas, and I was like, everything that's in Nassau, I can do here on the boat for free.
Just Google it.
Yeah. So, honestly, cruising again in the summer for a Floridian, not to sound snobbish, but it's like, okay, let's see. You got sun, beaches,
dolphins,
water, dolphin.
Yeah.
I got all that.
Great whites now.
Yeah. Right?
We have great white sharks swimming around.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
So I don't need, I was just like, I'm just going to chill on the boat in the air conditioning and I'll watch other people.
Well, it's a good thing you did now because isn't hurricane season coming?
It is coming.
Yeah. I've seen some wind pick up a little bit.
My wife was so nervous because there was a little tropical depression probably about 5 days before we were going to go.
Yeah.
It ended up spinning off and it didn't affect us, but it was like, here we go.
Right. So
because I don't know if you've seen those videos, but they don't like to cancel unless it's like really bad. And so sometimes you'll go out and then as you're coming back in, I mean, it's like...
You're feeling it.
Yeah. It's like Titanic.
Yeah,
you're like, here we go.
You would think that we've gotten past all that. There's ways to get around things like that. We should know, hey, by the way, we're in the middle of the ocean. There's a hurricane coming.
They do not want to cancel a trip. I mean, those cruise ships...
that's a lot of free passes.
Don't stop for anything.
It's a lot of vouchers.
Absolutely. I was watching a thing on YouTube about a compilation of cruise boats leaving passengers at the port because they didn't make it back in time. Like you go to Nassau or whatever.
They just leave them there?
Yeah.
What do you do? Fly back yourself?
I mean, it's like Noah's Ark, buddy. When that door closes, ain't nobody opening it.
That's miserable.
You can bang on the hole you
miserable.
Want. And then even in one of them, you see the captain's like, we tried to call you.
What?
Bye-bye.
Wow.
So they don't stop. When they say we're pulling out.
Wow. So I've thought about we should, for our young adult ministry, we should go on a cruise.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll call it Crossroads Cruise. Cruising with Crossroads.
It's very original.
Cruising with Crossroads.
Cruising with Crossroads.
So if you're listening to this, you want to sponsor that'd be great. If you want to sponsor anything we do, that'd be great.
Absolutely. If you would just like to send us money because you love us,
why not?
We will take that.
Seriously, we'll even take Chick-fil-A gift cards.
That's right. Because we have made $0 so far.
Oh man, well, it's good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a guest.
We do have a guest. We have Miss Sarah Matherly. Say hello, Sarah.
Hey.
Hey, there she is. Do you want to try the butter? What is it called? The
Better Than Butter challenge.
Butter challenge. Do you know what that is?
No.
So you know the beginning part where it's like, "Hey everybody, welcome to Project." That whole thing that I do.
Yeah.
It's that. We want people to try that and see what it sounds like. Would you like to try it?
Yes. Okay. So I had to say,
What do I say at the beginning? Hey everybody, welcome to Project 224. Just try that part. But try it in a buttery voice and see what happens.
Hey everybody, welcome to Project 224.
That's nice.
See?
That was good.
Maybe we'll use that now.
That's a little bit of melted butter in there. Yeah. That's like that butter you put on like crab legs or something.
It's clarified butter.
Yeah, that's right. Good job, Sarah.
So, all right. So before we get into Sarah, it's so good to have you.
Yeah.
I think we just got our explicit off of our podcast. And now
way to set her up.
Now we're gonna have to put a warning on this one. Sarah's in the room, so we got to put a warning. No, I'm just kidding. It's not because of Sarah. But I do want to say that, in all seriousness, this is going to be one that is going to be for older ears.
Mm-hmm.
So for children's ears, this is probably not going to be the best podcast. We are going to be talking about human trafficking, which I think is a very important thing to discuss.
Right.
And yet some of the topics and some of the things that we have to say may not be the best for young ears to listen. So we'll give you a second to turn it off if you're right in the middle of that. I'll just, drone this along a little bit right now. But anyways, it is an important topic, I think, that we need to discuss. And so actually, Sarah comes to us, and she has a huge heart for it. And she's been actually working with a ministry that does that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
At Liberty University, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Go Flames. Well, I'm part of Liberty now.
No,
I have my own student card.
You're part of
Yeah.
the...
I'm part of the student family. That's right.
That's
what I'm talking
right.
about.
Aw, we have classmates.
Just do a hard thing to me.
Aw. Falwell siblings.
Yeah.
All right. So we are so you've been working with that, and this is a topic that I think is important for the church because it is a topic I know that my wife has had us work, or not us, but she's had people that she went to Moody with who now work with this in I think it's either Italy or Greece, but it's an ugly thing. But it's a thing that's so necessary where we can be ministering to people, to image bearers, and doing things that tangibly can help others. Mm-hmm. And yet it's going to take a lot with us because it's hard for me to discuss it because it sickens me, it disgusts me, it not the victims obviously, but what people do to other people is terrible. So the level of depravity and sin that we get is awful.
Right.
And it gets me so upset, and I have to learn to have the grace of God to not just walk away from it because I can't handle it emotionally, but to say, no, I can handle it with God, with his help, and we need to. And so that's what we're here today to discuss. I think it's a great topic. I don't know if you have anything to add before we get into it, but
no, I'm ready to hear.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just do a kind of little interview style. When we say human trafficking, let's get some definitions out there, Sarah. So when we talk about human trafficking, tell us a little bit like what you mean by that.
Yeah, so one of the most recent definitions for human trafficking is on the Palermo report.
Okay.
And so it's a little bit of a lengthy definition, and we can go through and define some of the terms here. But it is the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by the means of the threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power or of a position of vulnerability, or of the giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation.
That's a simple definition. I don't know. What's the Palermo report? I don't know. I pulled that one on you. That's a government thing or?
Yeah, so it's from a few years of collaboration from our government.
Okay.
So it's something the Department of State's brought up in 2019.
Because I know that's one of the things that's a difficulty with this is even defining it, right? Because anytime you define it, people do just a little bit to kind of skirt that narrow definition. So they keep having to broaden the definition, right?
Yeah, especially for legal cases, you have to be able to prove that this is happening to someone. So the definition has to be lengthy.
It has to be pretty broad, yeah. Mm-hmm. So break it down a little bit for us. Okay, so human trafficking isn't, we probably think commonly that it's like the movie Taken, right? That someone's on vacation, and this does happen, but it's not limited to where someone breaks into your house, takes you, and then takes you off to slavery. Is that how it works? Is that...
So yeah, while that does happen, the term trafficking doesn't just mean people move from place to place, but it means the coming and going of people to a place where victims are trapped. So this is whether someone's brought into a home or moved to another country or taken into a hotel, but all these things are defined as trafficking.
Okay, so is this usually just for prostitution then, or...
So when people are victims of human trafficking, a number of things can happen. They can be kept by a trafficker and sold for sex. They could be forced to work in harsh conditions, such as coal mines or even hotels, and give every penny to their trafficker. Or they could be brutally trained to become child soldiers. So there's different things involved in trafficking.
Child soldiers, wow. So like in other third world countries. Oh, you know what I do? I
You
think
see
I
it a
do.
lot in movies. I know.
Yeah,
But
in the Middle East, maybe Africa, or
Right.
wherever, where they take over a village and then they take the kids and force them to
right, take them from their families and force them to fight and stuff like that.
What
Yeah.
we do to people is just awful.
Mm.
So okay, so and I know actually interesting, and it was, I don't know how long the signs have been up, a little over a year or so, but I know in our hospital now we actually in all the bathrooms have a sign up in both English and Spanish talking about human trafficking because migrant populations are also being taken advantage of, where they take in somebody and they force them to work in the fields for basically nothing, and it's a form of human trafficking too, and they'll take them from field to field to field. So if they come in because they get injured on the field or beat up or whatever have you, then in the bathroom, they'll have that
Wow.
number, and what to talk to someone, because a bathroom usually is where you're left. It's a single person bathroom, so you'll be left alone for the most part, or at least if somebody else is going in with you, it really raises flags to the rest of us of like why you got to go in there with them. So
Right. Yeah.
it's interesting. So I know that there's lots of ways to traffic and lots of ways to exploit people, and okay, so in how we think of sex trafficking, again, it's somewhat we think of that movie Taken, where it's just they're put it on a boat. But like some of this happens in public too, like where we probably see victims of sex trafficking on a regular basis. I know that I've heard from a movie that I showed you from, where a person who was a former student of mine, she was an actress in the movie. She came up with information that Orlando was actually a big place where this happened, and like you see people on the street of Orlando, you see prostitutes, they may be victims of sex trafficking. Is that what you found in your?
Yeah, from what I looked at about the Orlando area, there's actually a road called Orange Blossom Trail, and that goes, I believe, from Tennessee down to Orlando, and it's something where for a number of years, especially in our past, has been used as a route for human traffickers. Because it's true that they do move, but in general, there are literal streets called red light districts, and that's where prostitution is open. And that does happen in America.
First of all, I want to say, I didn't know Orange Blossom Trail went into Tennessee.
Yeah, neither. Since you said it, I was like, wow, that's a long
road.
I think I was just on Orange Blossom Trail last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's a common one in there.
Right.
I know that even in Tampa, you knew where the red light district was too. Right. And so many times you think of like, these are just people who they've made a terrible choice in their life, right? Or you think that they're dirty or whatever, your conceptions about a prostitute, but you also may not realize that there's also injury in that too. There's also the fact that they may be under great compulsion to do that. I mean, we all have ability to make choices in our life, but they're under great compulsion to do what they're doing, under threat of violence and exploitation.
Their families, I'm sure, are threatened, and
they keep their children, and you do this or we'll kill your children. I know that happens, right?
Yeah, that's a big motivator. Not a motivator, but that's a big use of force by traffickers is we'll kill your family unless you do this, or different things like that.
Okay. And the other thing that you think about too is a lot of times when you think about sex traffickers, you think of these just brute force people, like they're like just these mean, evil people that are going to try and take you, or there's always those YouTube videos of people just trying to steal other people's kids like right away and run off with them. Is that what you would think a typical human trafficker looks like, or what how would they look?
So it's really hard to say how they look, because there's such a wide demographic of ages and the type of people. Traffickers are people who may give you a job offer. They may be people that try to talk to you over the internet. They could actually pretend to be your boyfriend or girlfriend and then solicit you into trafficking. Or they could even promise to keep like family members. Like sometimes they come up to like a child in foster care and they promise to give them a home. Sometimes even family members sell their own.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know that we know a person who works for the FBI, and he was telling me one time he was about to bust a family who they would take foster kids in, and they were using them in a prostitution ring. And I mean, that's a world that I couldn't even imagine being in, but he was, thank the Lord, busting that place up. So I know that definitely happens. I know, so too, one of the things that this actress was telling me about, Rebecca's her name, she was saying, in Tampa, the Tampa area, one of the big ways some people do things right now are these advertisements for photo shoots and acting tryouts,
movie roles, or something.
Right?
Yeah.
So they'll put out an ad saying, "I'm an agent. Do this, blah 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 blah." And she's like, "You really have to learn fast what is a legitimate tryout and what isn't, because there's people that she's known or that they go to these kind of shady ones. They're desperate for work.
Right.
They never see him again.
Wow. That's why I always go with someone else.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing. So she would always go with her mom. She'd always try and vet the people as much as possible. She would always go with her mom to a tryout. And if it was like she's like gone to where she's like, no, looks shady, like
right,
where the location is or just the feeling she got. And, she, but that's something that they've been using too. So they're pretty sly. They're pretty, they're pretty smart people a lot of times. And they know how to get into your head, I think, and how to gain your trust. That was something in the movie that she was talking about too, was the guy, I think the way the guy approaches her is like, hey, didn't I see you at a party last week or something? Yeah. And she didn't go to a party.
Right.
And, but she didn't want to be rude. And so she was like, oh, I guess you have. And so then and I think they actually set up a situation where someone was harassing her, and he kind of came in like a white knight and like, got him away. And that was a whole setup. And that was to gain her trust. And so then, you had, then it was like, oh, I'm a safe person because remember we met at a previous party and she didn't know what he's talking about, but she didn't want to, be rude. And so it caused it. And then they became boyfriend, girlfriend, quote boyfriend, girlfriend. And then he led her eventually into the life where they basically took her.
So one of the questions I have, I don't even know if we have this down, but one of the questions is it, so when we're talking about sex trafficking and things like that, is it I mean, I know it's majority, but when you think of like a ratio or I guess a fraction, when you compare men to women to children, is it like 80% women who are brought in, something like that? Like, do you know anything like that? Or is it?
I think if I remember right from what I've been looking at, I want to say it's 78% women.
Wow.
And I think 50% children.
Man.
And I want to say
the age is like 12. Is that
12 is the average.
But as low as like I've seen as low as 4. I'm about to have a 4-year-old, and that made me vomit.
But 4-year-old?
Yeah, but 7 is another thing I think that you were showing.
I think 9 is typically the lowest that you see.
Wow.
Yeah.
Makes you angry just thinking about this stuff.
And I think, the biggest thing that we talk about here that, the biggest violation, obviously, one of the things is the Imago Dei.
Right.
And what it does is it really breaks them down. We said there's a psychological warfare that goes on, and it breaks them down psychologically and to where they don't even know what their worth is as a person anymore, right? They try and break them down to there is no worth as a person. Is that what you see?
Yeah, so I mean, some of these people are taken advantage of 10 to 15 times a day.
Yeah.
Wow. And so if your worldly concept of love is having that intimacy, that's completely broken.
Right.
And I've even seen some research on pimps, which are the people who traffic. They tell their victims to call them father.
Right.
And they tell them to call their fellow victims sisters. And so the whole concept of family is again being broken down. And the term used earlier, the life, it's almost like they're trying to psychologically normalize it so that the victims are like, well, I'm stuck here. There's nothing I can do. If this is all life is, then I might as well do whatever I can to survive.
And it is, and so we talk about this, even though it's not as severe when we talk about it other times, as severe as this is like a term switch, right? They basically term switch to like, no, I'm your dad. These are your sisters.
Right.
This is your family. This is your life. And it changes your whole sense of normalcy because they're trying to redefine you. It's a type of reprogramming.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can fundamentally break down the imago Dei in you, then they can then you don't think you're inherently special or have rights or anything like that, and they can just treat you like an animal or like they want to treat you, and a commodity, right? Is basically, and I think that's where, when we'll get into this is where the church has to step in later, and this is what we're going to have to rebuild up is their identity in God, their identity in Christ, right?
Why they were made. Yeah, absolutely.
We talked about Orange Blossom Trail. We talked about Orlando. Give people like how prevalent this is. Is this something that just happens out there? Like how big of a problem is this? Is this something really worth us discussing?
Yes. So while it is very, very prevalent in other countries, especially labor trafficking in other countries, it does happen in America.
Yeah.
Probably very close to where you are now. In the world, there are about 21 million people being trafficked.
Wow, that's so many.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So based on the Department of Justice, every 2 minutes, a child is trafficked for the sake of sexual exploitation. So by the end of this podcast, that's 60 kids.
Wow.
That's amazing to think about.
That's a youth group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, and we had said before, like, one of the big areas is Orlando.
Yeah, so as far as Florida goes, based on the U.S. trafficking hotline and how many calls they received from each state, Florida is number 3 for human trafficking, especially in Tampa Bay. Yeah, in the country.
Especially Tampa Bay. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
You worked there for a while, right?
Where I came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And then you said Orlando, and then even here in Volusia County. All along the I-4 corridor, I would imagine, because that's like a big international thing too.
Yeah, and how that highway is just moving, and you would have no idea.
Is that and that's something that's typical? Is high traffic areas where you have a lot of business and or tourism? Is that?
Yes, tourism is very big, very, very big for trafficking. That's why, like in Florida, you have Tampa, Miami, Orlando, Jacksonville, and the I-4 especially. Any major highway, especially on the East Coast, like going from like Florida to Atlanta, Georgia, to even Lynchburg, Virginia, since it's close to that area. That's where a lot of the actual movement of people happens.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's something that, I mean, when we had found that out before, it kind of gives you new perspective into some of these towns.
Yeah.
And it may be a magical day and a magical world for you, for some people, but it is a living hell for some other people, and it's truly sad. So that's all right. So obviously this is a problem. This is something that, especially in our area, that we need to deal with. Some theological issues that go with it. What when you're thinking from a what perpetuates this? You think I would think it would be obviously demand, right?
Yeah, it's hard to say that that word, but trafficking makes a lot of money, and it makes it off of people suffering.
Yeah.
This was a number from 2007, but based on the U.S. city, one city can make between $39.9 million and $290 million just from commercial sex.
Oh.
When you say the city, are you saying the people within the city, or how does this somehow benefit the government in that city?
Oh no, I didn't mean it benefits the government of the city, like the people, the traffickers within a certain city.
Okay, I got you. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so that obviously then that is the fact that people have a perpetual desire for sexual satisfaction, and they're not going to find it in marriage, as God has intended us to do that. So in their continual rebellion, they find a more accessible way to do that, and this is, it's easy. It's an exchange of money, right? Boom, boom.
Right.
It's like, instead of, I'll just go get fast food instead of doing what I'm supposed to.
Well, and it's an example of supply and demand. It's like in our country, we like like you just said, fast food. So everywhere you look now, there's a fast food place on every corner. And I think what we're seeing here, it's the same type of idea, right? Our society is so wrapped in just sexual desires that are sinful that where's the fastest place I can go to get this?
Right.
Where can I go? And so obviously sinful people are making it more accessible for that to happen.
Right.
Wow.
And speaking of accessibility, pornography is something that actually perpetuates this too, isn't it? You were saying?
Yes. So you may not even be intending to financially support any form of human trafficking, but it's very, very likely that the people depicted in pornography are being trafficked and they're not even willing to participate in that.
That puts a big spin, or not spin, a different take on it too.
Yeah.
To think that you cannot be for the abolition of human trafficking and sex slavery and still be okay watching pornography.
Right. Yeah.
Because they're very much connected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's an ugly thing to understand, but it's a good thing to understand too.
Right. To make people aware of.
Yeah.
Even people that don't know the Lord, like if that was said more, I think if people understood that, I think it just consciences would kick in and be like, oh.
Because the big thing that people talk about too is, pornography is something I do on my own. It doesn't hurt anyone. Why is it so bad?
Mm-hmm.
Well, here we go. It does hurt people,
right?
Mm-hmm.
People
because
that
it perpetuates an industry, right?
Right, absolutely.
So we never sin in a vacuum. We always, our sin always is affecting others, even when we think what we do in secret is not in secret. I think, and that's why God made the world that He did.
Right.
He knew that this type of thing would happen. He knew that this type of behavior would lead, down the rabbit hole that we've gone, and that's why He made sex to be within the confines of marriage. That's how you express yourself, because that is the healthy way to do it. That is the way that you maintain the Imago Dei. That's the way that you honor the Lord. Like that's the healthy way to do it. And yet we just rebel so much against that,
right?
In so many ways. Okay. And really, it's hard for me to talk a lot of these facts because it is so dark. But let's get to solutions. Like so here we are. We're a church. We're people within a church. We're Christians that are in this mess. Okay, we didn't ask for it, but it's here. So what do we do about it? I think obviously James 1:27 tells us that, especially in this case, pure religion is when we minister to the widows and the orphans, and a lot of these kids you would consider orphans.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we do?
So you're basically talking about the role that the church should have.
Right,
this,
right? So
because we talk about a lot of times that sometimes there's situations that we even discuss in this podcast that we feel like sometimes the church doesn't want to address. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like that. It's that weird, sticky,
like taboo.
Right.
So the name of the movie that Rebecca was in is called "Don't Look Away," and I think it's specifically because people do want to look away because it is grotesque. That you like, I don't want to even think about it. I'm going to keep walking.
It's like turning the channel on a TV.
Right.
Like, let's just go to something else.
It's the parable of the Good Samaritan, right?
Mm-hmm.
In some regards, we just want to keep walking.
Right.
We're just not, it's too much we think it's too much for us to handle emotionally. We don't want to get emotionally invested in it. And so we just keep, some of it may be that we don't know how to help. And so we just go somewhere else. But I think there's a big thing of like, I have a ministry to sex traffickers or prostitutes. That's, like, when do you hear that?
Right. Yeah.
No missionary comes to a church during missions week and says, so I have a mission,
Right.
And
I need some people to come with me.
Well, right. Yeah.
When are we going to Africa?
So, but it needs to be done.
Yeah.
Because again, I think the biggest need that they have there is going to be the gospel, right?
Mm.
We can save as many people out of this life as possible as we want to, and yet if they gain the whole world and yet lose their soul, what have we done?
Right.
So the gospel has to be prevalent, and the gospel, I think, is going to be key to what we said before, restoring that Imago Dei. The first and greatest need is going to be the gospel. But again, you're going to need the gospel not only for those who are victims of it, but as hard as it is to say, in some regard, How about the traffickers?
Mm.
We don't live in a just society. If we lived in a just society, the traffickers would be put to death.
Yeah.
But so if they're put in jail, does that mean that they're beyond the gospel now? No.
Mm.
Well, and usually, and maybe Sarah knows some about this, but a lot of times too, isn't it I'm sure there's not just one person, then when he's done, it's done. I'm sure there's like a network of
absolutely
people. So if this guy goes down, well, hey, the next person steps up and you take over the business. Is that, I don't know.
Cut the head off a snake and like 5 others pop up.
Yeah, I'm sure that's how it is. There's like its own little government going on within this.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I haven't studied it so much as like if it's a business that passes on to other people, but I knew though that it is a very interconnected network because these pimps will work together with each other. They'll have teams to bring people in and to transport them where they need to go.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need is gospel heart-changing power in there. Obviously, you need justice too. We need the government to be stepping up in this. We need it to be breaking up the rings. We need to be going in and actually saving these people, not from their sins, but from the thing. And then, we can't save people from their sins, but giving the gospel once we take them out of that environment, obviously, that's their biggest need.
Well, I think it leads you to the next thing we want to talk about is just the counseling side of it.
And I think that's the rough part because this is going to be the part that takes a lot of patience and grace.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things we talk about when this happens is the recidivism rate. Recidivism.
You could have the word. I don't know.
They tend to something I read in a book recently is you get a mess before you, and in this mess is tangled injury and tangled sin. Right? We all have inherent sin within us, but there's a lot of people who have entangled injury. And this is where they've been victims of this injury has so changed. They've been reprogrammed that they don't even know what the Imago Dei is anymore. They don't even know who they are, where their hope is, where their identity is. And so there's going to be so much untangling. And until that happens, you might have to go get them off the street a couple of times because they might return to it.
Right.
And are you willing to do that? I know one of the guys that I follow from Apologia Studios, his name's Jeff Durbin. He talks about his church was actually found from him starting a ministry in a hospital to people who were doing drugs and alcohol, so an addiction thing. And he said many times before church, his job as a pastor with his other pastor was to go find the people who had gone back to drugs, get them off the street, brush them off, and bring them in the church. And say, okay, we're starting again. Here's, and giving the gospel and the whole thing over again. Are we going to be willing to do that and have the grace and patience to minister to these people? And we go, well, we gave them a chance and they say, go back to the streets. That was their fault.
Right.
And you're like, well, have you had the patience with them as well?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I think also because it skews and mars. We talked about this before we started recording, but I think everything that we believe is normal because of what we know by the word of God, of what God deemed to be the right and correct way to live your life, is just, like you said, it's just broken.
Right.
I mean, obviously that's what sin does, but it's just broken. Even the idea of sex, right?
Right.
What God deemed as a beautiful thing between a husband and a wife. I mean, it goes beyond sex trafficking, but sex trafficking is a big broken mirror of what God says this is what it should be.
Yeah.
And so when someone's brought up in this world, I guess you can say this world, and even when they're brought out of that, they still have this concept of this is what my eyes have seen is what this is,
Right.
The church has to come alongside and say, hey, let me lovingly show you what God says, what you said, Sarah, earlier, what love is,
right.
What sex is supposed to be, the beautiful picture of it between the bride and the groom, what this looks like. But it takes time. Like what you said, Paul, it takes time. It doesn't just mean, let me take them out and the next week they should be rehabilitated. Well, what's taking so long? We just saved you from this.
Right.
I mean,
because that's the
Christ
thing.
can say the same thing about me. What's taking you so long?
And that was a beautiful thing that our pastor had just talked about when he was talking about how the disciples had been with him so long, and yet when they were trying to throw out an actual demon from somebody, they couldn't do it, and they're sitting there talking and arguing with each other, and it's like, how long, guys?
Yeah.
How long do I still have to put up with this?
Right.
And we look at that and I'm like, but I've been saved for, I don't know, 30 years, close to 30 years. And how often do I not trust the Lord? And yet we don't have patience with other people and say, because we think it's a movie. in the sense of, the FBI busts the door down, we grab them, we take them, and we end them, and then they're in a house and having dinner together, and yay, Norman Rockwell now, and no.
Right.
Like, we have to live life with people and struggle with them through this time for a long time. Many of them have been in this for years, and it's going to take even more time to get them out, because we have to give them the hope, right? And that's the thing. The gospel that we have is the only thing that replaces that.
Yeah.
What is your hope? Well, because now they're going to see themselves as broken. As you said, many of them were forced to and taken advantage of them at least 15. I've seen figures of 20 to 40 times a day. Okay, how do you replace that brokenness within them? How do you talk to them about having a healthy relationship maybe down the road? Obviously, they're not going to have a marriage soon after that, because they don't even know that concept. It probably wouldn't be healthy for them, but maybe they do eventually seek an actual marriage and whatnot. And how do you talk to them about, are they even able to do that? Like, where's their hope? Where is their imago Dei? Where is their identity now?
Yeah.
And teaching to replace that, replace it with truth. And only we have that. Yeah. Only the gospel has that. The world can't do that. They're going to take them out of that. There's going to be some things they're going to tell them, and it may help, be somewhat beneficial, but it's not going to give them the truth that they really need.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You have any thoughts about that, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about men, women, and children where their concept of love, their concept of trust,
right,
their concept of relationship, all of that is completely broken.
Yeah.
And it's completely tainted by these concepts of being abused and being taken advantage of, and submission is doing what you can to survive.
Yeah.
And these are all terms used in Scripture.
Right.
So we have to help through the Bible and through praying for the Lord to help them redefine these terms and say, no, love is God.
Right.
Love is not what these people did to you. Trusting someone is not, you'll never be betrayed by God. There's a complete turning around that has to happen, and that has to take time.
Yeah,
right.
That's good.
And it's something we have to do. I mean, Matthew 25, right? I was hungry, I was naked, I was destitute, and what did you do? Right. It's like, well, when did we see you as that, Lord? And he's like, well, what did you do to the least of
these you did to me, right?
And by no ways would I classify them least of them in the sense of that, but I would say the least of them in the sense of they're the ones that are the most vulnerable. Mm-hmm. They are the least able to help themselves. Mm-hmm. And so in that way, I would say they're the least of these. But, we have to be people who are ministering to them. So on that note, tell us a little about the organization, right? So we see the purpose, we see kind of like solutions, what we can do, but, kind of the action now, like what's the organization you got? It's Jars of Hope. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Jars of Hope was started by a woman named Jennifer Olson up at Liberty University. She started about 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's an organization that raises money for other anti-trafficking organizations, and she does this by selling these glass-filled necklaces. So each necklace has a different color, and each color connects to a different country or U.S. state and an organization within that state or country. So she has a personal connection to all these different organizations, and half the money for each necklace goes right to that organization.
Cool.
So she's always taking trips to these places and trying to learn more about it.
What's the site called? Is it jarsofhope.com, or do you know what it is? Or I'll look it up while you keep talking.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's jarsofhope.com.
Okay. Now, this is a Christian organization?
Yeah, this is a Christian organization. She does. She connects with Liberty because they have this volunteering requirement each semester. So I'm able to volunteer with her.
Cool.
Through Liberty.
It's actually Jars of. Oh wait, is this it? Yeah, jarsofhope.love.
.love.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Nice. See, we always miss that little part. It's jarsofhope.love.
Love.
There you go.
Not jars of clay.
Not jars of clay.
Jars of hope.love.
Sarah's like, who's Jars of Clay?
Don't make me start singing. And if I can't swim after 4. Man. Okay, sorry.
I know that song.
See, she really didn't know. She's like, who's Jars of Clay? You really had to think for a second. Who's Jars of Clay?
Okay, so Jars of Hope. So this is an organization that other people can get involved in. I mean, Is it something that you buy the necklaces offline? Is it something that you could, because that's up at Liberty? What could people do in Florida?
Yeah, so as for people like out of state and not really near the Lynchburg area where she's founded, I know that she's always willing to connect with new organizations. So if you live in one of the states that's not on her website, and you find some research on an organization that's fighting this fight against human trafficking, you can connect with her through her Jars of Hope Instagram.
Okay.
And that way you can connect her to another organization she could start raising money for.
Okay, so Jars of Hope is a good like jumping off point then.
It's great.
Did I say Clay? Jars of Hope. Jars of Hope.
Okay. Hope. Yeah, you said Jars of Hope. Yeah.
So Jars of Hope is a good jumping off point then.
Yeah, because whenever you go on the website, you can actually go to a necklace with like, there's like Virginia or Cambodia. There's all these different places. And when you click into it, you can see the organization it's connected to, and they always have good resources for more things you can learn about human trafficking and what you can do.
And this is something where people need to learn how to protect themselves too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can when we post this, we could maybe check this out and maybe post a link.
Yeah,
to it
definitely. There'll be definite links in the show notes about places that you can go. Obviously, this is an important thing.
Yeah,
there's just so many resources that we can't necessarily go to all of them right now. But I know just a quick one that's easy to remember: humantraffickinghotline.org. If you think something's going on, or if you feel that you're the victim of that, that's something you can call or go on to and get information from as well. So I know that was something. I think that was in our hospital. The bathroom is that one.
So what are some practical things as we kind of, I guess we're getting to the end here, but what are some things that we should do? You think one, I'm glad that Sarah came today because one, learn more about what's happening, right? Because I
think awareness is big.
Yeah, because you just shared stuff today that kind of blew my mind. So I think it's good for people to be aware of what's going on around you. Because let's be honest, a lot of times the way we live, we put blinders on, right?
Sure.
I want to see what's right in front of me. I don't care what's going on around me because that's their problem.
Right.
So I think it's good to learn. Seek more to understand human trafficking, like what you just said. Maybe there's someone that right? Someone that we might know might be involved in this.
I think too is there has to be a resolve just in your mind, and especially with Christians, is I resolve just that this is real and that this is my problem.
Right. And it's a sin. Man, it's a
right.
We have to stand up for this.
This is my problem that because there's a connection on the Imago Dei with these other, and so this is something that I need to have a part in solving.
Right.
And maybe you're not going to be the head of an organization, or you're not going to be the guy busting down doors, but you can be in support. You can be maybe a person who's fostering kids that have been victims of this. You can be many things.
Right.
It's, what is it? In the military, for every forward person, I think there's 20 support people for one person who's on the front line of a battle. And so that can be the same thing. There's people on the front line, but then there's going to need to be at least 20 people who are helping support financially and whatnot.
Because a lot of these organizations are nonprofits, so they're not getting help anywhere else.
Right.
But everyday people.
I read a thing, for every dollar that is spent for drug enforcement, for every dollar that is spent in human trafficking, $4,000 are spent for drug enforcement from our government. Wow. So, for like the FBI or whatever in our justice system in general. So, that's pretty lopsided.
Shows priorities, right?
Yeah, we're so, I understand that this even goes into drug trafficking. This even goes into immigration. Right. This spills over into a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And but we need to be people who are vigilant about this as well, because this is people. Yeah, these are people. That we gotta help. So anything else, or?
Yeah, I just wanted to really hit on that concept of awareness. It's not, I didn't hear about this until a year or 2 years ago. And if Jen hadn't heard about it at all, she would have never started an organization. So I think it's something we absolutely need to be discussing, especially in the church. Being reminded that God is gracious and that we have a role to play in this world for helping the widows and the orphans and the oppressed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I even think of Peter in this sense. If somebody were to come up to you who is a human trafficking victim and they want you to tell them of the hope that they have, just like what Peter says, that you have to be ready to give the hope.
Mm-hmm.
You know, are we as Christians, are we as a church prepared? And don't answer this pridefully, but are you really prepared to deal with that person and deal with that tanglement of injury and sin to where you can really be a help to them? Or are you just gonna smack a superfluous gospel bandage on them and be like, you know, be saved and everything's gonna be okay?
Right. Yeah.
And I say superfluous gospel because the gospel is the answer, but it's going to be a deep understanding of the gospel that applies specifically to this area and how you can give them hope.
Absolutely. And it needs to go further than just churches posting a quick story in a newsletter.
Yeah.
You know, it needs to be like feet on the ground, hands reaching out, getting in the uncomfortable situations.
Right.
And that's basically what it is. It's going to those highways and hedges where we don't want to go and reaching out where God says, this is where I'm sending you. Not the comfortable places, the uncomfortable places. Sure. Because you know what? It's like the book of Acts. I have other people that are in that city too.
Yeah.
And now go and tell them of who I am.
Sure.
So I think that takes prayer, right? Praying for the victims,
right?
Praying for the families, praying for those involved, praying for those who are parts of these organizations like Jennifer that you speak of. Praying for her in that situation. Pray for those that are going out in those situations and risking their lives to bring these people in.
Yeah.
Just be in prayer. If nothing else, we as Christians can do that.
Absolutely.
Is pray. Yep. Be on our knees and praying for these things. So, man, this has been very enlightening. I'm very thankful, Sarah, that you came on and talked to us about this today. And I hope that those that are listening, that we take this very seriously.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast right now. And if you have questions or if you have thoughts or concerns, you know how to reach us. We talk about it all the time. You can reach us on our Instagram page. You can email us at project
224podcast
at
gmail.com.
I always get it wrong. Some of you know us personally, so if you have, if you know us, contact us. Right. This is not something we want to go unnoticed or unspoken of. For those of you that are maybe in school, I don't know, this might get around Liberty somewhere. You have organizations right there, you know, Sarah's talking about. So there are ways to,
or if you don't, start something at your school. Be Jennifer.
Exactly.
Be the Jennifer at your school.
Or in your church. Start a ministry in your church.
Absolutely.
To be more aware of this. So again, Sarah, I'm so thankful that you brought this and you wanted to talk about it. You have a heart for this. And
that's awesome.
We're thankful that you're
here.
Yeah,
we're thankful you're in our group and that you want to come on the podcast.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Anything else you wanted to end with?
Just keep praying, and if this is really tugging on your heart, don't ignore the Holy Spirit.
That's good.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Well,
thanks for listening, everybody. It's been great. This time, I think I covered everything, right? Instagram, Facebook.
Find us on Instagram,
here's
Facebook.
The thing that, you know what else we need? I think we need people to like if you go on Apple Podcasts and stuff, like you can do stars, right?
Yeah, give us five stars.
5 ratings, because I think we move up a little bit.
10 stars if you can. 5 stars. And then remember our challenges. Number 1, if contact us on our Instagram and take a picture of you wearing your Project 224 shirt.
Yep, posted some from our summer camp.
Which Sarah's gonna get one now.
Yes, we'll give her one when she leaves.
And then the Better Than Butter challenge, people.
Yeah, come on, people.
I mean,
I know a lot of you listen because you say stuff to us, so just do it. It's not hard.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's the thing. It's a lot different.
That's all it takes. Do it early in the morning when you're just waking up. It's a lot easier.
All right, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Love you guys.